"You scare me a little," he confessed, his voice barely a whisper. "I was just a 55-year-old widow. How could I possibly be scary?" Hi, everyone. Have you ever experienced a moment that quietly, unexpectedly changes the entire rhythm of your life? This is a story for anyone who believes that the most profound connections don't always arrive with a bang, but with a soft knock on the door, and that it's never too late to let yourself feel again. If this resonates with you, please press 1 in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on more stories like this. Just after 6 in the evening, I became aware of a gentle knock at my door. A knock that strikes a balance between urgency and casualness, lingering in a space of uncertainty. A touch hesitant in its own skin. Indeed, that is the term, in a state of uncertainty. It was as if the presence on the other side wavered, unsure of its rightful place in that moment. As I stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing the final remnants of the dinner dishes, the warm aroma of roasted rosemary chicken hung in the air, a comforting reminder of the meal just shared. The sky beyond my window was adorned with that unique blend of orange and purple that only the early spring sunsets could summon. A serene calm enveloped the surroundings. Unsurprising, the sound of that knock altered everything. I wiped my hands on the towel draped elegantly by the stove, adjusted my cardigan with a gentle touch, and made my way to the front door. Surprise visits are always a twist, aren't they? I certainly wasn't anticipating company. I truly never did. In the years that followed David's passing, life seemed to have taken on a more languid pace. The days unfolded in a gentle cadence, marked by the soothing rituals of tending to the garden, losing oneself in the pages of a good book, and sharing a weekly coffee with Linda from the neighborhood book club. As I swung the door open, there stood Peter, my neighbor from next door. We shared fleeting smiles across the fences and engaged in brief conversations while tending to the trash bins or pulling weeds along the boundary of our properties. He was a handful of years my junior, perhaps in his late 40s or early 50s. It was said that he had gone through a divorce and had taken up residence here roughly 2 years prior. Consistently gentle, subdued, and somewhat introspective. That evening, he appeared anxious, his fingers tightly gripping a small basket swathed in a linen cloth. "Hi, Elena," he said, his voice slightly raspy, as if he had cleared his throat several times before approaching. "I apologize for the sudden visit, but I found myself with an abundance of scones and thought you might enjoy a few." I blinked. Ah, scones! It was the final outcome I had never anticipated. My heart fluttered slightly, not from excitement, not yet, but from confusion, from curiosity. A figure approaches, bearing the warmth of freshly baked delights as the sun dips below the horizon. That occurrence had not transpired since my college days. A smile crept across my face, perhaps a touch too wide. "Your kindness is truly appreciated, Peter. I would be delighted to have some. Would you care to step inside?" "If you have a moment, I've brewed some tea." He paused for a fleeting moment, just long enough to stir doubts within me about whether I had overstepped a boundary. He gave a slight nod. "Tea seems delightful." In the sunroom, we lingered as the final rays of daylight poured through the windows, enveloping the space in a warm, golden glow. I poured chamomile into the familiar porcelain cup, the very one I would sip from on those chilly evenings. It possessed a peculiar sense of comfort, a blend of the familiar and the novel. Peter was not one to engage in conversation, and I found myself similarly reserved lately, yet the quiet that enveloped us felt anything but awkward. It truly felt warm and gentle. as if we were both partaking in an unspoken connection that transcended the need for words. He shared that he had recently taken up baking as a hobby, mentioning how it soothed his mind after long days spent working from home. Every word captivated my attention, and I observed the subtle furrow of his brow as he spoke of his teenage daughter, who primarily resided with her mother. "I miss her," he murmured, his voice scarcely rising above a whisper. "Isn't it peculiar? You nurture them, pour your heart into every moment, and then, in the blink of an eye, they transform into someone else's cherished companion." I inclined my head in agreement. I grasped far more than he could ever realize, the poignant void that lingers when children embark on their own journeys, leaving behind echoes of their presence. "That's not unusual at all," I remarked softly. "It's simply the essence of parenthood. I believe this is the most challenging aspect. Releasing the grip." In that fleeting instant, our gazes intertwined, if only for a heartbeat, and I beheld something, perhaps acknowledgement. A shared sorrow nestled beneath the layers of resilience and the relentless pursuit of perseverance. As he departed an hour later, having indulged in 3 scones and 2 cups of tea, I sensed a flicker within me that had long been dormant. A gentle warmth blooms within my chest. A brief glimmer. That night, as I nestled into bed, the basket he had brought lingering on the counter with a solitary scone remaining, I gazed at the ceiling, pondering whether it was mere kindness or something deeper. I reassured myself to avoid overanalyzing the situation. I found myself at the age of 55. He was merely extending a gesture of neighborliness. That was everything. Yet, a soft murmur from the depths of my consciousness stirred, revealing a truth I had long silenced. It is perfectly acceptable to embrace your emotions once more. For the first time in ages, I allowed that voice to linger instead of shoving it aside. It was not until 3 days had slipped by that I laid eyes on Peter once more. I had persuaded myself that the tea and scones would be a fleeting indulgence, a momentary act of goodwill between neighbors. Yet each time I walked by the sunroom or caught a glimpse of his house, a gentle, unfamiliar flutter stirred within my chest. I chided myself for my folly, immature, yet I found myself straining to catch the faintest sound of footsteps beyond the door, lingering a moment longer as I styled my hair in the mirror. At last, Saturday arrived. The day had blossomed into warmth, playfully whispering promises of summer ahead. As I tended to the lavender bushes lining the fence, the morning air filled with the scent of blossoms, a voice suddenly pierced the tranquility. "Do you require assistance?" I pivoted, and there he stood. Peter stood at the boundary of his yard, sleeves rolled up, a shovel gripped in one hand, and a playful grin dancing across his face. He remarked that he was striving to make his garden resemble yours, even if just to a fraction of its beauty, as I nod toward the vibrant bursts of purple and yellow that adorn my walkway. Yet, I find myself merely excavating voids, clinging to the faintest glimmer of a miracle. I chuckled, brushing the sweat from my forehead with the back of my glove. Out here, miracles and mulch are essentially one and the same. He let out a soft chuckle, resting the shovel against the fence with a casual ease. I found myself pondering a different thought altogether. Would you care to join me for dinner this evening? Nothing elaborate, merely a creation I'm assembling. I would relish the companionship. I stood still, caught in a moment of sheer disbelief. For a fleeting instant, I questioned whether I had truly heard him, or if it was merely a figment of my imagination. Yet his gaze was sincere, wavering, yet receptive. An evening meal shared with a gentleman in the comfort of his home. It had been, my word, more than 10 years since I found myself in such a predicament. This time, my smile unfolded more gradually. I would be delighted by that. Peter's house mirrored his essence perfectly. Orderly and modest, adorned with subtle personal details that hinted at depths he may not have fully acknowledged. Along the hallway, framed photos of his daughter created a warm tapestry of memories, while a bookshelf brimming with travel guides stood proudly in the living room, a testament to adventures yet to be embarked upon. Upon the table, he arranged the candles with care. Only 2, nothing overly lavish, and a lasagna that enveloped the space in a warm, inviting aroma that instantly evokes a sense of home. As we dined, the dialogue unfolded with a newfound ease. We delved into our histories, exploring not merely the events, but the nuances that lingered in the silence between them. "I once imagined retiring in Italy," he said, a wistful smile gracing his lips, opening a quaint little cafe by the water. Yet fate had a different course in mind. I inclined my head in agreement. David and I envisioned a journey across the country in an RV. "We have even chosen the model." Then his heart faltered far too early. The words flowed forth with a surprising ease that I hadn't anticipated. Typically, I steered clear of discussions regarding David. It was a sensation akin to betrayal. Yet, with Peter, it was different. He maintained his gaze, refusing to resort to empty platitudes. He simply absorbed the words. Following our meal, we retreated to the back porch. The sky had transformed into a gentle velvet, with stars starting to emerge from their slumber. The silence enveloped the scene once more, rich with the gentle hum of cicadas and the faint melodic tinkling of wind chimes drifting from a nearby yard. "I'm glad you came," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "This house has long ceased to be merely a refuge for rest." I gazed at him then, truly gazed. The soft creases framing his gaze, the manner in which his hands lay upon the chair's arms, unwavering and firm. Then he took an action that caught me off guard once more. He extended his hand towards mine. He neither grasped it nor drew it closer to himself. His fingers grazed against mine, a subtle beckoning. For a moment, I paused, not due to a lack of desire, but rather because I had lost the memory of being caressed with such tenderness. There was a gentle ease to it, filled with warmth and respect, a connection that conveyed an understanding. "I see you, and I am eager to discover the depths of who you are." I allowed my fingers to entwine with his. We lingered in that moment, our hands gently placed between us, 2 souls connected by an unarticulated bond, something profoundly genuine. As I strolled home, Petereth the twinkling stars, my heart beat with a measured rhythm, no longer racing with anxiety or doubt, but instead resonating with an unexpected tranquility, a steadiness I realized I had longed for. That evening, I found myself by the window, pen in hand, as I penned a solitary sentence in my journal for the first time in years. There is a stirring within me once more. Uncertainty loomed over the path ahead, leaving me in the dark about its destination. Yet, I was aware of this. It had transcended the mere notion of a neighbor. It was a journey into possibility, a quest to unearth a version of myself I believed had slipped away with the passage of time. For the first time in ages, a sense of curiosity about tomorrow stirred within me. Nearly 2 weeks had passed since that evening on Peter's porch, since that soft caress, since I allowed someone to enter my world, even if just a fraction. In the stillness that ensued, Existence found its way into a new cadence, nuanced changes, delicate movements. As I tended to the garden, Peter's hand rose in a friendly wave from the kitchen window. One morning, he placed a warm loaf of bread at my doorstep, accompanied by a sticky note that read, "Still practicing. Please inform me if you notice any improvement in my progress." It lacked the grandeur or sweeping drama often found in novels, yet it held a profound authenticity. One afternoon, following a brief rain that had rendered the sidewalks moist and infused the air with the scent of wet earth and lilacs, he called out, "Hey," he said. "I realize this is rather sudden, but I could really use a stroll. Care for some company?" I acted without a moment's pause. I shall retrieve my jacket. At the intersection of our street, the ancient oak trees loomed overhead, their branches forming a protective canopy over the pavement, as if standing sentinel to our meeting. The clouds started to fragment, allowing delicate rays of sunlight to descend and caress the pavement below. Everything seemed to have been renewed, as if it had just emerged from a cleansing embrace. We strolled leisurely, not from a sense of caution, but because neither of us felt the urgency to reach any destination. On that day, an intangible essence lingered in the atmosphere, a subtle vibrancy that infused life into every moment. Initially, our conversation meandered through the mundane, touching on his job and my recent efforts to breathe life back into the tomato plants. As we ventured down the winding path of the neighborhood park, our conversation effortlessly deepened. "This trail was once a path we walked together," Peter murmured gently, "my daughter. In her childhood, she found joy in gathering stones, weaving tales of their enchantment. Once she handed me one and said it would shield me from the sorrows of adulthood." He offered a smile, yet it failed to illuminate his eyes. "Is it still in your possession?" I inquired softly. He inclined his head in agreement, the uppermost compartment of my bedside table. Whenever the thought of discarding it crosses my mind, I find myself unable to do so. I hesitated for a moment, then extended my hand to grasp his once more, reminiscent of that evening on the porch. This moment was marked by unwavering resolve. "I believe it remains operational," I remarked. He halted his steps, standing there under the blooming dogwood tree, and gazed at me in a manner that left my breath suspended. "Elena, I never imagined I would experience these feelings once more." I was taken by surprise. We have both experienced the tapestry of life. A smile graced my lips. "We possess. It appears we have been defeated. Perhaps that is the very reason this holds significance." He nodded with deliberation, then delved into his coat pocket and retrieved an object, a diminutive polished stone, scarcely larger than a walnut. He rotated it thoughtfully in his palm before delicately setting it into my grasp. "You need protection as well," he remarked. My throat constricted. This kind of tenderness was unfamiliar to me. Not any longer. Yet in that fleeting instant, a truth surfaced, one I had long been reluctant to acknowledge. Trust was slowly starting to weave its way back into my heart. We continued our stroll, fingers intertwined, the stone radiating warmth in my hand. As we strolled along, we encountered children pedaling joyfully on their bicycles, couples navigating the path with strollers in tow, and the invigorating aroma of fresh grass mingling with the earthy scent of damp leaves that enveloped us. And somewhere along that meandering journey, it struck me, I wasn't merely allowing someone to enter my world. I was making my exit, embracing laughter freely, allowing myself to be visible without shame, nurturing hope unburdened by fear. As we arrived at the trail's conclusion, The sun hung low in the sky, stretching shadows long and slender across the pavement. "I don't want to say goodnight just yet," he murmured. I glanced at him and offered a smile. "In that case, refrain from doing so." He inhaled deeply and moved nearer, his gaze probing mine, unhurried, unassertive, merely posing a question without words. I inclined my head in agreement. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, I experienced the gentle, hesitant touch of lips meeting my own. Not a spectacle of fireworks, not a grand cinematic explosion, yet there is warmth. Acquaintance, a vow of potential that may unfold gradually, subtly, if we allow it to do so. On that particular night, I refrained from putting pen to paper in my journal. I found it unnecessary. I was already aware of how the forthcoming entry would unfold. I believe I am succumbing to a gentle descent. This time, fear holds no sway over me. The dawn following that kiss revealed a world transformed, each detail shimmering with newfound significance. The world had not transformed, not in essence. It was the perspective I held. I found myself lingering at the window, savoring my coffee as I watched the early light gently unfurl across my backyard. The sensation of my shoulders easing, the air embracing me with unexpected warmth, despite the ominous promise of clouds in the forecast. A transformation stirred within me. Perhaps that is the outcome when one begins to embrace their emotions once more. It encompasses not only the delight, but also the peril, the uncertainty, the potentiality. Peter called later that afternoon, his voice imbued with an unusual softness. "May I visit you?" Before he could complete his inquiry, I found myself responding with a swift affirmation. He entered, cradling 2 coffees, a nervous smile playing on his lips. "I hope this doesn't feel too fast," he said, offering me the cup. Last night lingered in my thoughts, refusing to fade away. I motioned toward the chair opposite mine in the sunroom. I found myself in the same predicament. We lingered in that moment, our drinks in hand, allowing the silence to convey what words could never express. He turned his gaze toward me. Truly observed. "You frighten me just a bit, Elena," he remarked. I arched an eyebrow, a chuckle escaping my lips. "Is it me?" He inclined his head in acknowledgement. This sensation resonates with authenticity. For quite some time now, I have refrained from allowing anything to truly feel real. I grasped that more profoundly than I could articulate. I had constructed my existence following the gentle cadence of quiet routines, secure boundaries, and the comfort of predictable days. It was an existence that demanded little from me and offered little in return, merely sufficient. Peter was greater than that, I admitted, my own fear echoing in the words, "I'm scared too." Perhaps that is a blessing in disguise. He smiled, and the trepidation in his eyes began to fade. The remainder of the afternoon was devoted to sharing the unspoken thoughts that often lingered in silence between us. The sorrow that lingers, transforming its form as time unfolds. The facets of our being we concealed for countless years. The aspirations we had interred so profoundly that we lost sight of their enduring existence. And gradually, an image started to emerge, not of a romance crafted in bold, vivid hues, but one rendered in soft, subtle shades. A tale not of second chances, but of fresh starts. That weekend, we ventured to the farmer's market side by side, unremarkable. Freshly gathered peaches, warm bread, and the joyful echoes of laughter fill the open air. Yet it seemed, indeed, the sort of ordinary that transforms into memory. As spring gracefully transitioned into summer, The threads of our lives began to intertwine in subtle yet significant ways. The gentle embrace of Sunday morning breakfasts, collaborative crossword puzzles, a fresh tome resting on my porch, accompanied by a note. I believe this will resonate with you. We took our time. There was no necessity for that. Affection, genuine affection. It doesn't always arrive accompanied by flashes of brilliance or grand pronouncements. At times, it arrives with a deliberate, measured cadence, a fleeting look exchanged over the dinner table, in the comforting knowledge that someone awaits you at the door after a long, arduous day. One evening, as we lingered on my porch, observing the fireflies twirl amidst the tall grass, he took my hand once more. This time, neither of us wavered. "You know," he said, "I believe we crossed paths at just the right moment." With a gentle smile, I leaned my head against his shoulder. Negative. It seems we found our way to one another at the moment we were truly prepared. He nodded, and the night enveloped us in a gentle embrace. Not all had transformed. The world beyond continued its relentless spin, unchanged. The garden awaited the tender touch of a gardener, its weeds standing defiantly in the sunlight. The clock continued its relentless march forward. Yet within me, a door had swung wide. And I felt, deep within my very essence, that this chapter of my life held as much value as any that had preceded it. Perhaps this marked the dawn of the most genuine chapter to date, one constructed not upon the foundations of youth, timing, or perfection, yet in the realm of comprehension. Courage is the quiet strength that propels us forward, the unwavering resolve that allows us to face our fears and uncertainties. It is not the absence of fear, but the determination to act in spite of it. In moments of doubt, courage whispers to us, urging us to take that first step into the unknown, to embrace challenges with an open heart. It is the light that guides us through the shadows, reminding us that true bravery lies in vulnerability and authenticity. Each act of courage, no matter how small, weaves a tapestry of resilience, inspiring others to find their own strength and to rise above adversity. In the serene enchantment shared by two souls who have weathered life's storms, they have come to understand the essence of what truly holds significance. Therefore, to all who may be inclined to hear, I offer these words. Persevere in your pursuit of connection. Do not shut the door on an opportunity simply because it arrived later than you anticipated. At times, an unforeseen act can spark the dawn of a new journey,